and welcome to Harry Cole Saves the West, the show where American grit meets British backbone. Tonight, immigration. From the US's crackdown to chaos in Britain. Across the pond, a migrant sex offender was mistakenly released from jail and paid £500 of taxpayers' cash to leave quietly after he threatened to block his own deportation. And now, an Afghan migrant who arrived hidden in a lorry has been charged with the brutal murder of a dog walker in London. As one headline put it, it's not just the crimes, it's the feeling that the establishment just doesn't care. Meanwhile, look at Trump's America. Military sites used as hotels instead of hotels. 1.6 million self-deported and 500,000 removed. Why is one country getting it so right and another country getting it so wrong? Tonight from London, we're joined by the rising star of Reform UK, Layla Cunningham. Good evening, Layla.
Hi, Harry.
You defected from the Conservatives not long ago to join Reform. What is it that Reform are going to do differently? And how is it going to work? And how long is it going to take if you get into power?
Well, it will be immediate. I mean, we have to, in order to stop the illegal migration that you're talking about, we have to repeal so much legislation that embedded the ECHR within our legislation. But the reason I defected, Harry, was because the Tories consistently promised one thing and delivered the total opposite. Migration, law and order, home ownership, they failed on all of that. We had the highest tax burden since World War II and crumbling public services, a massively growing public sector with embarrassingly low productivity. They led in mass migration that completely changed the country in every way, and it's just still costing us money.
But how are Reform going to do it? You say we're going to have this sort of bonfire of legislation on day one. That's going to get bogged down immediately in Parliament, in the House of Lords. It will be judicially reviewed. It will be dragged through the courts. You're going to hit the exactly same stumbling blocks that the Conservatives have found for 14 years, and Labour finding out the hard way that it's not so easy just to shout, smash the gangs and hope the boats stop. You know, you're going to be up against not just the courts, not just the Lords, but the entire left-wing media establishment, the BBC, the Guardian, you name it. You know it's going to be an uphill struggle. Aren't you risking making the same mistakes the Tories made in promising the world to voters, but being unable to actually deliver quickly?
No, because none of the other parties are promising to leave the ECHR. We have an international
The Conservatives are now, and admittedly, I'll give you that. They could have done it when they were in power, so they are promising it now, but it's taken them a long time to get there. But carry on.
I mean, yeah, they're promising it now because we've made them. We forced their hand. But if an international treaty stops us from keeping people safe in the country, then that treaty has to go, full stop. And it's shocking that successive governments haven't realized that. If we have a law that prevents us from protecting our streets, then we rip it up. We're not going to sacrifice the public safety. And so we want to deport convicted terrorists as soon as they arrive. Right now, you can only, under the Borders Act, you can only convict an illegal migrant once they commit a crime and receive a custodial sentence of 12 months or more. I want the trigger, and Reform wants the trigger to be illegal entry. That's the trigger for deportation, not once they've committed a crime. We don't want to wait for someone to be raped or killed to take action. No, we want to prevent.
From where I'm sitting, looking back at the old country, it looks like anger is reaching sort of boiling point.
Yeah.
The series of horrific crimes involving migrants in recent days and weeks, and then we had that almost epic farce of the Epping attacker who was accidentally released from prison instead of being deported. He then had a nice jolly day out running around London, 3 days out running around London while the police chased him. And then we learned today that he was given £500 on a pre-charged credit card to get him onto the plane to go back to Ethiopia. I mean, what the hell is going on over there?
I mean, we're a joke. We're a joke country. I mean, think about how ridiculous it is, Harry. This is a convicted sex offender. And basically, I think he threatened to lodge, some last-minute asylum claim under the ECHR. And the Home Office basically bribed him not to do it with £500, which is about a year's salary in Ethiopia, I hear. And he said, all right, then, I'll go. I mean, talk about creating an incentive to come over on the boat. Come over on the boat, sexually assault someone, spend just a very minor amount of time in prison, and you get a year's salary.
And the one in, one out policy appears to be, they deporting people back to France who mysteriously managed to get back on the boats and come back. I mean, You say the UK is a joke, but it's almost sort of feels to me like it's an entire systematic state collapse around the immigration system. And how are reform going to? This is past the point of fixing, isn't it?
No, because we have laws and treaties that stop us from keeping people safe. And I know, and you change the law. You don't hand out taxpayer money or cash to criminals as they're doing now. Basically, so Blair brought in the Human Rights Act to embed the ECHR within legislation and to get closer to the EU. So we would repeal that first. And any convention, the Refugee Convention says that you cannot send someone back to a country where they're tortured. That also has to go. The priority has to be the safety of British people. And we have to prioritize their needs over the needs of any international treaty or any illegal migrant. So it's got to stop. The betrayal has to stop.
So to be clear, reform would tear up any roadblock to immediate deportations of people who arrive, basically classing people who land on these boats in the country, illegals on entry, and make it the very act of entering the UK illegal that would render you not fit to be allowed to stay, regardless of circumstances.
By the way, Harry, it is already illegal to enter our country.
It's not that well enforced, though, is it?
No, only 1%, actually, because what happens is they rock up on a boat, they land on our shores, and they just say the word asylum, and then they're treated as innocent asylum seekers. It's madness.
Well, how is it that this one case with the Ethiopian sex offender, they did actually manage to deport someone quite quickly? So it can be done if there's a sort of enough of a political backlash. Obviously, there's an entire cottage industry around asylum lawyers, literally like sort of greeting people on the shores of Kent with leaflets and phone numbers of what to say, coaching them what to say in interviews, working for them. This is, what's reform going to do about that? There are people making millions of pounds, not just the smugglers, but legal firms making millions of pounds out of this racket.
Yeah, because they're enforcing legislation that we would repeal. Parliament is sovereign. I mean, and I was really surprised that he was deported so quickly. So the machinery to deport is quick. We don't have a returns agreement with Ethiopia. Yeah. But they just had to suck it up and take him back. Why can't they do that for everyone else? Why do we have to wait for them to kill or sexually assault someone for them to take action? That's why I feel that the trigger for deportation is after a serious conviction. The trigger should be on illegal entry, full stop. People have had enough, Harry. People have really had enough. They don't feel prioritized. They feel betrayed. And you and I know that a government's first duty is to keep us safe, and they're failing miserably.
Is that why you think, a large part to why Reform are so far ahead in the polls? You're on, 27, 28, 29% these days? And
goes beyond 30 most times.
Do you think Reform have hit a bit of a ceiling, though, in the fact that it has been stuck at sort of around the very high 20s, very low 30s for a few months now? Labour are obviously losing support on the left, the Greens, the Tories are bumbling around in the mid-teens, but that Reform number doesn't seem to be ticking up in a way that it was, I'd say, earlier in the year.
Well, we've topped over the last 100 polls. None of the parties are really going up and down, but we are hitting mid-30s. And sometimes we're hitting the same as the Conservatives and Labour combined.
Are you worried though that there's going to be a sort of alliance? We were discussing this on the show last night. The possible alliance of Liberals, Labour, Green, Islamists, all coming together in a sort of rainbow coalition of chaos to stop Reform. We're seeing tactical voting beginning to happen in the recent by-elections in the UK. It could be that could be the most biggest party in terms of an election held in the UK tomorrow, but locked out of power by essentially a left-wing stitch-up.
I mean, that is always a fear, and I think that if you fail people like Labour has or Conservatives, you can galvanise different groups to join together. I think our message is for everyone. It's not left or right. It's about what's right or wrong. It's about a government that finally prioritises the British public, which we haven't seen before. It's a government like Trump who will say, we will do whatever it takes and we will do what we said we would.
And are you going to be the face of that in the London mayoral elections? Was it next year or the year after?
sadly, it's in 2.5 years, Harry.
2.5 years. You're going to have to go through a lot of interviews denying you're running for reform as London Mayor before then, aren't you?
I know. I haven't been asked. If I am, I think I would do it. Why
Hey,
not?
there we go. That's what we say. Let's make some news. I think that's the first time you said you've gone quite that far. Do you think reform could take London? Boris Johnson obviously won London, but he ran it.
100%.
Yeah, really?
London's.
Have you
never
seen
been
Central London recently?
I have. I'm a councillor in Central London.
I know, but I don't think that's gonna. I think obviously you're doing very well in the suburbs, and the donut obviously around London is quite reformy. But Central London, I don't think it's going to be quite your stronghold, is it?
You'll be surprised, Harry, how many people have contacted me because the thing is, it's not about left or right anymore. It's not about Labour or Conservative. There was never a choice. If you were left-leaning, you had Labour. If you were right-leaning, you had Conservatives. And it's the first time that there's ever been a choice. We have a mayor that's basically deprioritized public safety to the point that he's endangering. My kid was mugged at knife point. My other kids were targeted, mugged. I've been mugged. Like, no one I know hasn't been a victim of crime in the past few years. There's no visible policing. He's cut stop and search, managed to even politicize that. He's cut public counters. He's closed police stations. And now he's cut police from the royal parks. He's only good at pursuing motorists. That's all he cares about.
All right, we'll come back and we'll do a proper conversation about London soon. It does sound to me like you're running from where I'm sitting, though. What we call not a denial. Layla Cunningham, reform, rising star and potential London mayoral candidate there. Thank you for joining us. With me tonight in Washington, D.C., in the studio, we have RJ Howman from the Heritage Foundation and Kim Klasick, Republican firebrand, former council nominee. Kim, remarkable interview there that, it's not, we've got to a stage now where prominent British politicians are unable to defend the state of the country and say quite clearly, we are a joke. I mean, it's this for a once great country, as an ally, as a friend, as an offshoot, I'd say, of Britain. I mean, how bad does this look from where you're sitting as an American?
No, it looks really bad. And this is a lot coming from me because I live in Baltimore. I'm in a sanctuary state, even though they don't label it that. But this looks awful. And I will say, just hearing about what's happening with this, immigrant that was from Ethiopia and that he was paid to basically self-deport. I mean, this is a large opening. I mean, anybody that is involved in human trafficking would look at this situation and say, you know what? We're headed to the UK. I mean, this is a great way for them to make money.
Factor, yeah.
I mean, this is awful. This is horrendous. You're not going to have people coming just from Ethiopia. They're going to be coming from all over the world.
Indeed. RJ Howman, 1.6 million have, quote, self-deported under the Trump administration. 500,000 have been forced out. A million out. A million by the end of the year doesn't sound, out of the question. 20 million at the end of 4 years was the promise, though. Some way off that. Good start, but some way to go, right?
Yeah, well, I think the books are being cooked a little bit in terms of
in what way?
In terms of the 1.6 billion in self-deportation. That's a number. It's an estimate. I think it's our dear friend Art Arthur at CIS kind of came up with that number. You're going off of public available data. It's an estimate. I mean, even us here in the United States. I mean, we were they're paying them to essentially deport as well. You got that through the CBP-1 app, which was once used to process illegal aliens.
So you could, for our British viewers and listeners, that was you could apply for asylum before you even reached America.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, we call it unlawful entry, like on an industrial scale. I mean, it was illegal entry under the guise of legality. I mean,
and that was a pull factor in bringing people.
Correct. Well, the CBP-1 app, has had multi-purposes. I mean, it was used to help, in the trade front and everything. You had a truck driver coming up with a load. He'd use that app. Then that app was corrupted to be used to come here on a frivolous asylum claim, and now it's essentially being repurposed to be used to self-deport.
You're saying that Americans, the American government is literally paying people to deport themselves. Do you think voters realise that? Do you think that? I mean, it baffles people when they hear that. Right?
Well, the other thing, I mean, too, it's like I want to see the receipts, though.
Yeah.
If you're paying somebody to get on that airplane, okay, how do you know they landed? I mean, are you communicating with, that country? Let's say get on the ground, and then what do they do once they get on the ground? How do we know that they don't get back on an airplane and come here or pay or use that money to then pay a smuggler or trafficker?
Yeah.
They all still exist. To come back.
Give me nodding away there. I mean, it does feel like we're in a sort of doom loop, vicious cycle. Exactly that example happened again earlier in the week in Britain. They set up this thing called the one in, one out scheme, which basically meant that someone who had no right to stay in the UK could be deported back to France, a safe country, on the proviso that someone who did have an asylum claim or family in the UK would be swapped. Obviously, first thing that happened, someone got straight back on a small boat and came over. I mean, how did Trump seems to have been able to break the sort of cycle a little bit? How has he done it? And how do we export that round the wider West?
Yeah, well, you guys, first you have to want to.
Yeah,
right?
I mean,
That's the first step.
I think the public are pretty. I've just told RJ not to swear this time when he came on the show, but I was about to swear.
Yeah.
I think the people are pretty naffed off right now.
Yeah, no, they have to want to. But also, when you look at what President Trump did, I mean, as soon as he got in office, I think people realized, the boss was in town, right? Daddy was home, is what some people said. That is what they said.
It's
and so
true.
they knew, a lot of people knew at that point to just turn around.
Just don't even
You
bother.
know what I mean? Not even bother to do it. And
So actually, spin and optics and noise can be as a powerful deterrent as. And he's obviously got a very loud voice.
Exactly. So strength is power, and I think that's how he leads in everything that he does. I just don't know if you have somebody there in the UK that is the same as Trump.
Well, Layla seemed pretty angry.
If she gets in, I might
put
go
that on a
across the
billboard.
pond and help
Put that on
her,
a billboard. Put that right at the channel.
How is that? How is it? Trump's opinion polls ratings are up and down, but he is consistently seen as one of the successes of his Trump 2.0 is being this clampdown on immigration. How much further do you think, you're an expert in this world, how much further do you think he could go? And obviously we're doing a lot to tackle illegal migration, but a lot of legal migration is still sky high in the United States and in the UK.
Well, I mean, first, though, too, you look at the top 2 items on his Agenda 47, which he ran on. 75 million people got behind it. First was secure the border. It was done. To point 2, it was right when Trump got in office. Him coming here discouraged everybody from coming. But when it comes to it, mass deportation has been delayed. Okay, let's be real.
And does the base realize that? Are they itching for more?
I think the base it's become a little bit of an optics show that you're seeing. Oh, the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Now you have a little bit of a squabble in D.C. where Noam and co., who were really driving the optics of mass deportation to show we're trying, even as Congress has taken 7 to 8 months to give them those mass deportation resources via reconciliation. But now all of a sudden you can see DHS leadership is now getting a little, oh crap, we're not really mass deporting as the voters intended. We don't want to do the worst of the worst anymore. Well, that was your guys' intention. She made a good point, though, and I want to stress this again, too. As you saw with the truck driver out in California and everything, we shouldn't wait for blood on the pavement to deport these people. You have 600,000 known criminals, and I'm sure there's even more in jail. California, for example, doesn't report the status of a lot of their criminals that are currently incarcerated. You have 1.4 million with a final order of removal. Those are people who had their claims adjudicated, they were ordered removed, and then they just gave the middle finger and went back into the country. At least the floor when it comes to mass deportation should be 2 million, not 600,000, the amount of criminals. Get them while you can. Put your resources out there. Nab multiple in each raid. Let's make people
I mean, how are the wider public seeing this? If the Trump supporters quite like it, wider public, there is kind of a bit of unease about the sort of not necessarily the imagery. What's the word I'm looking for? There's kind of masked ICE agents, pulling people over, arguably in some cases, on a whim, or, getting lucky, going on fishing hunts. Is there a backlash growing against the tactics? And does anyone in the administration care about it?
I don't think anybody cares about it. I mean, look, this was the mandate when President Trump was elected, all right? Everybody voted for him because they knew that he was going to do something about illegal immigration. And I would say independents, even moderate Democrats, of course, Republicans, that's all. We wanted that from the day that he stepped into office. And so I agree with RJ. I think you've got to get in there and really get these people out of here. I know they were talking about more people wanting to self-deport. I don't want the self-deport. I want you to go in, grab them, get them out of here. I've had enough. I mean, think about back in the day where we had Ellis Island. Remember when they shut it down because we had too many people coming over at once? This should have been shut down a long time ago, but because it wasn't, and because President Trump has to clean
it was turned on and turned off at various points throughout American history, right? And then obviously the Second World War.
But we never turned off the
a mass refugee movement.
We never turned off the southern border, and people were overstaying their visas. We should not allow this to happen. Unfortunately, Democrats have.
We're going to have to go to a break in a minute, but I want to talk to you about this story that's breaking tonight. A German political activist dubbed the anti-Greta is saying that she's going to try and claim asylum in the United States because she's persecuted for her free speech views in Germany. This is Naomi Sibit, I believe is it. I probably said that wrong. She's an anti-migration activist. Should the United States give asylum to white Europeans who are fleeing they claim, political restrictions in the UK, in Europe?
I think they should have to go through the process just like everybody else. I mean, you can't just come over here and talking about, I'm fleeing. There's a process.
Yeah.
And that's what we voted for. We voted for people to go through the process. And so, I feel awful, but you know what? Guess what? I feel awful for our situation here in America with our taxpaying dollars going to some of these people that are just here for a free ride.
Yeah. RJ, though, Trump has made noise about, Trump and France have made noise, and the State Department have made noise about possible granting asylum to persecuted political beliefs in Europe, South Africa as well. Do you think she'll be successful?
I mean, honestly, to be honest with you, I don't care, okay? We have enough going on.
RJ Herman's, he's here. He just doesn't care.
We have enough going on in our own country. Again, too, mass deportation really isn't happening to how we intended. I don't think we're even fully safe in certain areas. Let's worry about ourselves. But the good thing is, though, with President Trump in office, the people who are running this system now, they're looking at every claim isn't being, again, approved on an industrial scale. To Kim's point, like, go through the process or whatever, but at least we know darn well now every claim will be adjudicated and stuff. You don't have magical words like we used to down at the border. Credible fear, I have fear of returning home. And then they put you in through a slog of a process where you'll get to disappear into the country because your claim won't be adjudicated for 4 to 5 years. It's just a mess.
Kim, final question. Do you think a Trump-style crackdown would ever fly in Britain or Europe, or is he uniquely blessed in this country that you've got this guy who people seem to listen to?
Oh, well, look, I was endorsed by Trump in 2020, so I think we're uniquely blessed. And I don't think you'll see this over in the UK, but you know what? You never know.
Yeah. All right, coming up after the break, talk of the big fella. Trump's been globetrotting, he's juggling tariffs, shutdown chaos, and wars that won't end. But is he losing focus on serious issues? We will discuss all that. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. Click subscribe, won't miss a thing. Search Harry Cole Saves the West. Tonight in the Middle East, fragile peace and a president stretched thin. With both sides in the Hamas-Israel conflict accusing each other of breaching the ceasefire, is Trump losing his hold on that success? Joining me from Israel tonight, Elon Levy, former government spokesman, and with us in the studio still is Kim Klasick. But here, Elon, good evening. Bring us up to speed on the latest. Obviously, all sorts of accusations flying around of the ceasefire being stretched incredibly delicately and thinly. Is it at risk of breaking, and what's happening? All right, hold on, stay there, Elon, and we can't actually hear you. Kim, President Trump obviously heralded his ceasefire just a couple of weeks ago in the Middle East as a great moment. It put him on the map. A possible Nobel Prize contender. It does seem to me that it's looking a little rocky now.
It does, but I think they were always expecting something like this could possibly happen. I noticed as soon as the peace deal went through, you had people like Vice President J.D. Vance, Secretary of State Marco Rubio. They're all going in succession over there to kind of make sure that everything was handled. And I think that is because they weren't sure if everybody was going to keep their end of the bargain, including the Prime Minister of Israel.
Let's see if we can speak to Elon Levy in Israel tonight. Elon, can you hear me now?
Hello, Harry, I can hear you.
There we go. I was just saying the remarkable scenes we saw just a few weeks ago with the hostages release was a real moment for Israel, for the world, for Donald Trump as well. It does seem to me now it's looking a little bit more tense, accusations flying across both sides of breaking the ceasefire. Can you bring us up to speed with the latest, and are you confident that this delicate peace is going to hold?
Well, right now, Israel's trying to get Hamas to uphold its side of phase 1 of the ceasefire. It is still holding on to 13 bodies of hostages it murdered. And we know it's playing games. Just yesterday, Israel released shocking drone footage of Hamas terrorists burying body parts and then digging them back up again to hand them over to the Red Cross. I mean, truly, this is psychopath behavior. Not only are they holding on to the hostages, they're also still shooting at Israeli soldiers. We've lost 3 men in the Gaza Strip who have been killed by Hamas's violations of the ceasefire. So Israel has responded. It's responded with precision strikes against Hamas military targets, taking out dozens of Hamas terrorists, including some who took part in the October 7th massacre. And now the message is very clear. We need all of the bodies of the murdered hostages back, and then we have to move to phase 2, in which Hamas will agree to leave power and demilitarize. But that's not going to happen without massive global pressure on Hamas to admit that the game's over.
Do you think they are playing games, or they just don't want to admit they actually don't know where these... It's a horrible thing to have to discuss, but they just don't know where these bodies are?
Hamas is playing games. That's what we saw with the macabre spectacle yesterday of taking body parts, burying them, and then revealing them again for the Red Cross. We know that they're trying to buy time. And the reason Hamas is trying to buy time is it doesn't want to move to phase 2 of the ceasefire. Because phase 2 of the ceasefire is effectively Hamas's surrender. It's Hamas relinquishing power, laying down its arms, and Hamas doesn't want that. It's a jihadi army whose reason for existing is to continue waging jihad until Israel is destroyed. Now, Harry, let me tell you something even more disturbing. A new Palestinian poll dropped yesterday showing that Hamas has become more popular since the October 7th massacre. It's by far the most popular Palestinian political party. It would win a landslide in presidential elections. And a third of Palestinians say that their support for Hamas has increased since the massacre. So unfortunately, if Hamas thinks that declaring and waging this war has made it stronger, it's going to be in no rush to admit defeat in this war and let everyone move on.
Wasn't that one of the major problems with the, I think it was Douglas Murray that described this, the deal as unpalatable and naive, in the fact that actually this was kind of always going to happen. The biggest flaw in the Trump-Witkoff-Kushner terms is when you get about a third way down that 20-point plan, and it suddenly says Hamas are going to put their guns away and march off into the sunset and not be prosecuted for their crimes or not be held accountable for it. And a lot of people said, well, how the hell is that ever going to happen? Not least it's incredibly uncomfortable for the Israeli side, but as you say so clearly there, these guys are not just going to walk away peacefully.
You're right. No one expects Hamas to waltz into the sunset.
So was it naive to sign? Was it naive? My point was being, I suppose, was it naive to sign it?
That's not a flaw in the Trump plan. That's the genius of the Trump plan. Because previously, every ceasefire deal let Hamas hold on to hostages as insurance for a full Israeli withdrawal from Gaza so they could plot the next October 7th. The Trump deal forced Hamas to give up the hostages and lets Israel hold on to half of Gaza as insurance that Hamas will relinquish power in the other half of Gaza. The deal says the hostage is out first, and then we'll talk about the day after. And it's clear, Hamas does not want to demilitarize. It does not want to relinquish power. It certainly doesn't want to de-radicalize the Gaza Strip. And that is why we need global pressure on Hamas's patrons, its state sponsors, Qatar, Turkey, Egypt, to tell it, game over. If you do not agree to lay down your arms, you are completely on your own. We're not going to support you anymore. Those were the state sponsors that told Hamas they had to free the hostages. They need to tell Hamas now to lay down its arms.
Are you confident they are going to do that? It strikes me as the sort of the eye of Donald Trump is now, he's in Asia now. He immediately off the back of the hostages being released, he was back into speaking with Putin, trying to bring Putin to the table. There was talk of a Budapest summit. He's got chaos at home with the government shutdown that's still rumbling on and coming up for a month now. Are you worried that, are you worried that Donald Trump's sort of attention span is moved on, and this is why, Hamas and co are slightly taking the mickey?
Now, I don't think it's to do with President Trump's attention span. In fact, he really wants to get this done because he wants to open the door to normalization agreements between Israel and Arab countries. Let that be his legacy and get the Nobel Prize. I'm concerned because most countries, so in hoc to Qatari and Turkish influence, they are not using any of their leverage to put pressure on Hamas's state sponsors to end this war. But that is the only way that this war is going to end for good, if Hamas is completely isolated. This war will not end for good if Hamas feels that countries like the UK, Canada, France are giving it backing by recognizing a non-existent Palestinian state. Hamas will be forced to lay down its arms if its patrons say they won't support it anymore. But so far, we haven't heard that from Qatar and Turkey, and that's why I'm doing all the rounds of the interview studio saying that's where policymakers' pressure needs to be.
All right, well, we'll make sure we put that up in lights for you. How is it playing out in Israel? Obviously, Netanyahu's divisive figure doesn't even begin to cover it. But if you do end up in a sort of horrible stalemate where we are currently seem to be now, stuck between phase 1 and phase 2 of the peace plan, yes, the hostages, the living hostages, I should say, sorry, are home, and that that can only be welcomed. But if you get stuck in the sort of limbo of still occupying half of Gaza, as you say, having pop shots taken at IDF troops by Hamas, and Gaza slipping into factional chaos, shooting each other in the streets, how is that going to play out for the Israeli government?
Israelis want to end this war. They want all the soldiers home, the reservists home, and to put this nightmare behind us. But you asked before about naivety. No one in Israel is naive about Hamas. Everyone understands that unless Hamas is forced to step down and relinquish its weapons, there will be a next time, and it will be worse, and it will be worse because Hamas will feel vindicated. So even the big protest movement in Israel that was calling to bring the hostages home said first bring the hostages home and we'll worry about Hamas later. Israelis know that this may be a long battle because Hamas is ideologically, fanatically sworn to Israel's destruction, but there is a proposal, a plan that the whole world has agreed to now, the Donald Trump peace plan. Israel says yes to all 20 points, and Israel is hoping that other countries will come on board and implement it and pressure Hamas so that this war can end without another recourse to fighting. I think the Prime Minister himself would really much rather put this behind him. He would quite like to get a normalization agreement with Indonesia or Saudi Arabia and use that as an achievement running into the next election.
And how are relations between the two men themselves? Obviously, there was a remarkable scene at the White House when President Trump almost sort of ordered Netanyahu to pick up the phone and apologise to the Qataris as he was trying to unlock that peace accord. There's been multiple well-sourced reports in the US media that they've had some fairly lively conversations, to put it one way. Are relations there good? There was a sort of suggestion that Trump had lost his patience with Netanyahu and believed he'd gone too far in some aspects of pursuing Hamas.
I think Netanyahu's recent visit to the White House was his fourth since President Trump was re-elected. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't think any other world leader has had so many visits, and the relationship.
Maybe Zelensky, really but yeah, I take your point.
Maybe Zelensky, but it really is one of the closest relationships. And when Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner joined an Israeli cabinet meeting, they said you drove a very hard bargain. We were climbing the wall sometimes, but you were right to be very tough. Because Israel has its own security interests to protect. And I think there will be frank disagreements behind the scenes, but Israel and the US are completely in agreement. This has to end with Hamas's complete removal, or there will be a next time, and it will be worse. And neither Israel nor the United States want that. We want this war to be over and for the whole Middle East to move on.
And the final question, though, are you concerned about, I've seen it here, the sort of once traditional sort of relationship between Israel and the American right in this country was pretty rock solid. The younger generation and the sort of more online-driven right of the US, large parts of Donald Trump's support base, are openly questioning at best the military relationship with Israel and littered with some pretty horrific anti-Semitism at worst. That it's becoming more and more sort of noisy. Are you concerned that the longer-term relationships with Israel and the United States is in a little danger?
There is a lunatic anti-Semitic fringe on the American right, and major problems, I don't need to tell you, on the American left. It's a generational problem. You've got half of young Americans who say they support Hamas, not the Palestinians.
It makes
Hamas.
Yeah.
So I can only hope that, cooler heads prevail and the older generation manages to talk some sense into the young'uns about why that relationship has historically been a pillar of America's foreign policy and security.
Elon Levy, great great thoughts as ever. Thank you for joining us and stay safe. Good night. Kim, on that point that Elon was making there about the sort of Donald Trump and Netanyahu, the force of Trump's unique So it's a unique diplomacy of blending in business, show business, heft, force. Yeah. It was vital to getting that deal over across the line in the Middle East. Since then, he has sort of jetted across halfway across the world. He's meeting with the Chinese tonight. He was on the phone to Putin. He's pretty much everywhere except the Oval Office right now. Does he have a responsibility to, pick up the phone here and say, come on, let's as Elon was saying, get on the phone to the Qataris, get on the phone to the Egyptians, and say, come on, we need to hurry this up.
Yeah, I mean, you would think that he would, but I would like to say that I think that the relationship does seem, and I'm an outsider looking in, right? Mm-hmm. It does seem a little bit strained at the moment. Yeah. You had mentioned earlier that, it looked like he wasn't too happy with everything the Prime Minister of Israel was doing. Yeah. And that's why I mentioned, you had J.D. Vance, Marco Rubio, they were headed to Israel, and I think that they were trying to have these conversations. I think it is naive to think that phase 2 is going to happen. I don't think Hamas is going to disarm themselves. I think that is never going to happen. And so I think getting the hostages back, obviously even those that are no longer with us, is really said and done. And at that point in time, I think they're going to have to, I know it sounds awful, but they're going to have to take out Hamas. And I don't know what that
Donald
means
Trump's
or
been
what that
threatening
looks
it.
like.
He said, he said a couple of times, he said it on Truth Social, he said it to the media, if you don't play along, we will sort this out. I mean, I don't imagine American troops it would be involved, but would you be comfortable seeing Americans actively supporting the Israelis more than they're already doing with, say, airstrikes or similar?
If it takes out Hamas, I would be just fine with it. Look, I know you mentioned the younger generation, right? Look, I'm on social media every single day, and I do see this. I do see where there are kids on the right that do not want to support Israel in many different ways, even if it's airstrikes or financially. I see that happening. But at the same time, we're talking about a terrorist organization, and this isn't something that is, in a vacuum, right? We have to make sure that we stay vigilant, even here in the U.S. So I think it makes sense for us to support in some way. Now, whether or not the president is going to do that, whether or not the administration wants to do that, I don't know. Is he going to get pushback from those here in the U.S.?
Well,
absolutely.
Absolutely. A large part of his base is now it's pretty anti-Israel now.
Yeah, you can see it. You can see it.
How important do you think that's going to be on the sort of the next generation, who comes next? J.D. Vance has obviously let it be known that he's quite, much more of an anti-interventionist than Trump. He was reported to have raised concerns about striking Iran, which obviously was a key part of unlocking all this. Do you think that the level of anti-Israel rhetoric and feeling within the base is going to shape the next primary to pick the next person who's going to be the Republican candidate?
I do think so. I think the next generation, and this is a generation younger than even myself, right?
Yep.
I think the next generation is very involved. They've been very involved in politics. We saw what happened with the assassination of Charlie Kirk. Yep. There were a lot of people that turned out. You've got more turning point chapters than ever before. And even in these turning point chapters, you still see these people questioning whether or not Israel is truly our ally.
Indeed. Fascinating. Don't go anywhere. We're going to come up next. We are going to discuss all the developments in the spy scandal that is rocking Washington. Worse than Watergate, it's been said before, and I think we might be saying it again. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Harry Cole Saves the West. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. You won't miss a thing. Massive developments today in the Arctic frost investigation, showing the FBI under the Biden administration pulled thousands of phone records, bank records, communication records of hundreds of journalists from the right-wing media outlets, politicians, Republican influencers, you name it. They were there. Kim Klasick still with me, and joining us down the line joining us down the line is Joel Berry from the Babylon Bee, and RJ Howman from the Heritage Foundation is back with us. Joel, are you there? Good evening. Talk us through this astonishing announcement from the House Oversight Committee today that, this started with six senators having their phone communications, the data around their phone communications intercepted by Jack Smith's investigation into January 6th at the FBI. This now is spread, thanks to whistleblowers, to 400 different individuals and some of the biggest media brands in America. This makes Watergate, look like Toy Town.
Yeah, well, that phrase "worse than Watergate" has been so done to death over the last 12 years because of the way the media approached Trump. Everything was worse than Watergate. This was worse than Watergate. That was worse than Watergate. It's kind of been played out. But in this case, this is a really massive scandal. It is. It really shows that kind of everything that the Democrats accused Trump of, the anti-democracy, authoritarianism, anti-free speech, all this stuff. It really, the accusations were admissions, and so it's kind of not surprising, but I'm glad that these truths are finally coming out, and I guess a side of me kind of wants to hear some of these conversations because there's probably some pretty juicy stuff in them.
Fair play. But do you really think? I've been plowing through a bit of the report today, and they sort of seem genuinely convinced that there was a plot involving everyone from Newsmax to Fox News to conservative training colleges to the GOP to all of Donald Trump's family, friends, lawyers, associates, and convincing themselves that they were involved in some sort of plot to bring down the U.S. government, to spark an insurrection. I mean, surely at some point someone would have thought, this is nuts, but they seem to have gone along with it.
Well, it shows exactly why the Democrats played up this January 6th narrative so dramatically the way they did, because for Biden's entire term, they used it as an excuse to spy on Americans, to imprison their political opponents, to go after, to go after the right, to go after innocent people on the right, in just a vicious and brutal way, bringing the entire power of the state down on these people. They did it for 4 years. We all saw it. It was terrible. And this whole January 6th narrative was their excuse for doing it. And now that narrative has kind of fizzled out, we're kind of picking up the pieces and seeing how far this went. It's pretty awful.
Joel, stay there. I'm going to have a chat with some guests here in the studio. RJ Howman, 197 subpoenas to 34 individuals and 163 businesses. This is a fishing ship, right?
I mean, again, it just shows how law enforcement agencies were hijacked to advance political interests.
On that important point, there isn't any evidence in this report that this came from the orders of the White House.
Oh, come on. Give me a break. I mean, it is the deep state swamp apparatus. You can make that argument, a lot of the stuff at DHS too, and ICE being abolished from within. You look what happened at DOJ, FBI, DHS, ICE under that Biden administration. It was a coordinated political war. And one other thing on the FBI front too, not to interject something else here, but you had the FBI agents coercing with the Southern Poverty Law Center, CLPC, going after conservative groups like one I used to work for, which Slack used to get rid of our whole internal office communication. These agencies have been hijacked, and we're finally just figuring it out.
Jack Smith says, name the place, anytime, any place, I'll come and defend this to the House Oversight Committee. His lawyers are saying he's ready to testify, he's ready to talk. Let's hear what we have to say, right? Why aren't they calling him?
Yeah, great question. I mean, you got to do something now. It's one thing in the media coverage of it and everything, but I don't even think we understand the scope and scale of this stuff. We have to get to the bottom of not only what happened at the FBI. Again, so many other agencies that are in the law enforcement apparatus were hijacked. We got to make sure they can't be down the line. We got to dig everything up. You can't just point at it and say, "Whoa, that happened. That's bad." Prosecute the people and get to the bottom of it so it can never happen again.
Kim, you got Ted Cruz tonight saying, his AT&T's lawyers told him that, to not go. They were trying to get his phone records. The legal team for the phone network turned around and said, "Hold on, what is the First Amendment here? Like, what the hell? What the hell is going on?" How much do you think this is going to be? Will we ever actually get to the truth of this matter, or is it just going to get lost in the noise of the Dems saying, well, shouting, well, you did this, you did that, screaming about Comey, screaming about Letitia James, and it's just going to end up in this messy, we've talked about this before on the show, it ends up with this messy lawfare fight where actually the public kind of get desensitized to these astonishing revelations because they just look at them and think, you guys are all bad as each other.
Well, it should go far, right? You got the major influencers on this list, like, say, Steve Bannon. But then you also have...
well, they did actually manage to lock Steve up, so they got him.
Yeah.
Slippery slope.
They also have, though, a Pennsylvania State Senator, Doug Mastriano.
Yep.
Okay, so they went all the way down the line. Okay, so this has to be investigated. I think it's a little confusing though, because I don't know if phones were tapped or if this was metadata, and I think that's
it's a lot of it.
right?
A lot of it's metadata, but what we've learned tonight is banking is bank details. It was basically asking permission to.
Did they have a warrant for all these things?
What haven't we learned yet, too? I mean, there's still so much.
Yeah, Joe. How do the how does the administration, how do these individuals who are targeted themselves, elderly gentlemen who run conservative training courses that teach, Senate interns about processes, accused of being an insurrectionist running a sort of madrasa for terrorists out of his barn somewhere. I mean, how do the right keep the focus on this rather than, as I was saying there, this just gets dragged into another shouting match about lawfare and going after James Comey?
Well, it is a challenge because, we all know next week there will be something else. I do fully expect for Congress to drag some people in front of some committees and wag their thumb and maybe do some yelling, maybe write a few strongly.
We're losing that. Hang on, we're losing
letters.
Oh,
I don't need to end it. This needs to end in prison terms for some of these people. It does.
RJ Herman, I mean, there's all sorts of talk that Trump's, only just getting going. Mike Davis, one very pugnacious Trump world attorney, saying, this is just the appetizer. Trump's going to go. He's obviously indicted Comey. He's indicted John Bolton. Letitia James is looking like she's in a bit of bother with her mortgage forms. Where does the retaliation stop? Obama was out the other week saying, "Whoa, let's all calm down a bit." Yeah. Do you think he's getting worried? Do you really think that the Trump administration is going to push it that far?
Yeah, listen, read between the lines there on that comment from him. I mean, I think they know the scope and scale of things that happen at those agencies. I mean, there's just, when you think, and I'm thinking too, when we're talking FBI and everything, we know that these FBI agents were trying to set up Tom Homan, for an example, on a future.
He hasn't quite said he didn't take the cash, though, has he?
Well,
I mean, he's slightly.
Well, but listen,
he's slightly,
listen. No. The cash thing. When you were talking about a bribery, if you will, on a potential electoral result for a potential role that results from it, those are FBI guys.
Call me old-fashioned. I tend to find. Call me old-fashioned, but I tend to find when you're talking about 50 grand in a brown envelope, it's not a great place for any politician.
Oh, so you believe it entirely though, because it's from that. I mean, listen. There's the scope and scale of this, of the things that they tried, probably are going to blow our freaking minds. I think in the next couple months or the next couple years. Everybody's got to keep their head down, keep chugging, and keep finding stuff. The American people aren't going to be like, all right, well, you did it.
Kim,
keep going.
The Republicans have got to hold the House, right?
Yes.
Or they are going to be in, having unleashed, you could argue lawfare or retribution. I can't even speak now, I'm exhausted. Retribution themselves. If the Dems take back control of the House, it's going to be impeachment, it's going to be hearing after hearing, and the pendulum will just swing back. Yeah. Doesn't Obama have something of a point of we all just go, we don't need to lock each other up all the time. Like, maybe, I know the Dems started it and all of that, but is it time to call quits on this and say, look, let's just stop?
No, absolutely not. And I'm not worried about the House either. I'm not worried about the House. I mean, we're going to have many seats picked up in Texas. I think North Carolina, we're going to pick up some more seats. So I'm not worried about losing the House this midterm. But at the same time, I think President Barack Obama is probably very worried. Yeah. I mean, we saw a lot that came out during Trump's first term and the spying on Trump Towers. And there was even things that were found on Anthony Weiner's laptop. I mean, we still didn't get all the answers from all of that jazz. So I hope they continue to dig. Like RJ says, we shouldn't stop. We've got the House, we've got the Senate, we've got the White House. Let's just keep on going.
Joe, would you be comfortable to live in America that, indicts their former presidents and tries to lock each other up? Because, if they go for Obama, they'll go for Trump after Trump is out of office. Where does this end? And does it make America look a little bit like, France or somewhere?
Yeah, that's the worry. Does this kick off an endless cycle of people arresting each other and indicting each other and using lawfare against each other? I don't know. I hope not. It would provide a lot of great material for the Babylon Bee. I will say that. So regardless of what happens,
we are
be there
in
to
the
make jokes
business of,
about it.
We are in the content business. It would certainly keep this debate going. Joel, just while I've got you, there's We've been talking all week, actually, really, about ever since Trump said he basically said he's not running. Trump 28 doesn't really work. It's too cute. And he basically tipped Rubio and J.D. Vance to basically carry on his project to pick up the torch. Just quickly, your thoughts on Trump 28. He's trolling, right? I mean, the fact he's even talking about it is sending people round the bend. And in your view, the J.D. Vance Rubio ticket looks pretty unstoppable, right?
Yeah, well, I guess I think I feel safe calling it right now. Maybe that's a little presumptuous, but I do think J.D. Vance will be our next president. I think Marco Rubio would be a great running mate for him. I agree with Trump. I think it's a really unstoppable combo. Marco Rubio has been just a huge bright point in this administration. He's been doing a great job. I think he would do a good job kind of getting the most of the normal conservatives, the traditional, Christian conservatives. J.D. Vance kind of has the backing of a lot of these young conservatives, this rising new right, and so yeah. I think it would really be a tough ticket to beat if they combined forces.
Indeed, J.D. Vance, in fact, speaking right now at Turning Point Rally, I think I'm not sure. Oh, there we go. Kim, on that exact point, it's kind of his to lose right now, isn't it?
Yeah, no, I think J.D. Vance is obviously tapped to be the next president. I myself, though, I'm a huge Secretary of State Marco Rubio fan, so I don't know if he would want to run on a ticket as a VP. I don't know. RJ might know.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you can argue.
A long way to go.
1 minute left. Yeah. But we can argue that actually, Rubio is the more senior and experienced politician, but obviously J.D. Vance has got the natural title.
Well, they're both acting in accordance to their current roles in the political reality. J.D. Vance is doing kind of the ho-hum stuff he has to do with VP occasionally.
Yeah. And he has to stay at home on all the foreign trips, obviously.
Yes, that is true as well. But then Rubio as well, too. The guy is just, I mean, when you look at it, I think the two best are Scott Bessent and Rubio are just foot on the gas. I mean, all the stuff they're doing. I wish some certain agencies, DHS, were run as good as those agencies are.
Do you want us to clip that bit up? Should we distribute that
Remember,
clip?
mass deportation, 75 million voted for.
All right, that's enough. Joel, thank you for joining us down the line from the Babylon Bee. RJ Howman, on form as ever. Kim Klasick, thank you very much. All of you, do come back and see us very soon. That was Harry Cole, Saves the West. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back tomorrow.